Welcome back to Candid Convos with Nurse E. Today is going to be a very special, intimate episode with you guys. I am going to share my story, my journey, my testimony. So whichever word you want to put with what it is that I'm going to discuss, I've given you 3 of them, okay? And this is very, very sensitive, very emotional, very vulnerable and transparent because I did not want to share my testimony. But this is how the Lord uses people. This is how we as Christians point others to Him. This is how His name is glorified. This is how He is honored. This is how He is respected. This is how His word does not return void. By sharing what it is that He has allowed to happen in our lives, how we've overcome the challenges that come along with what we've experienced, and how in the end, no matter what, He gets the glory. And He puts you in a place where you didn't expect for that journey to put you there. So I'm going to talk about a recent miscarriage that I had, a stillbirth that I had, and basically how that allowed me to make room and make space for Candid Convos with Nurse E to sit and talk to you guys about your health, to sit and talk to you guys about your stories, your journeys, questions that you may have, concerns that you may have. I now have the availability to do that because of what the Lord has allowed me to go through and what He's doing in my life. So I hope that this episode will help someone, even if it's just one person. And I know that in some way it's going to help me as well. So, where do I start? So, the story that I'm going to share with you transpired between 2020 and 2024. So, 2020 to 2024 were some rough years for Nurse E. But here I am. So in 2020, fall of 2020, my husband and I found out that we were pregnant. And I would like to say that we were excited, but there was so much going on in life that I think there wasn't enough time to process things or get excited, because as soon as we found out we were pregnant, I was also miscarrying at the same time. So I was about 10 weeks into the pregnancy when I found out that I was miscarrying. And so that first miscarriage, it was sad. But again, so much was going on with life, with work, and with his family, and with us, that there just wasn't any time to kind of focus on what exactly was going on. And so there wasn't much grief, there wasn't much mourning, there wasn't much thought of loss during that time, because life was just overshadowing that particular circumstance. So let's fast forward to May of 2022. Staten and I, we find out that we are pregnant again. Now, note, this is not planned at all. Okay. If you know me, and if you don't know me, you're about to know that I've never been very big on having a very big family or having children. I was definitely okay with being the fabulous auntie and dealing with my nieces and my nephews, loving them, and just living my life. You know, I loved my life. I love where Staten and I were and how we were just able to pick up and go and just do things with not the responsibility of children. I love my nieces and nephews. I love hanging out with them, and I love them going home. That was it. That was it. Any of my friends, you talk to them, they know, like, Ebony ain't sweating no kids at all. But in 2022, May of 2022, when we got back from Mexico, I found out that we were expecting. And again, I wouldn't say that I was necessarily excited because I had experienced the miscarriage at 10 weeks back in 2020. So it was kind of like, let's get past the 10 weeks, and then, we can start to see like what's going on, how things are going. So we get past the 10 weeks. We get to, I think around 10 or 12 weeks is when I actually went to the doctors to confirm through them that I was pregnant. So it was pretty far along. And it was like, okay, like this is happening. I'm getting ready to be a parent, and all right, so I started to embrace it. And then shortly after, about 15 weeks, my stomach started to pop out, and I'm like, okay, now this is for real. And I was also scheduled for an anatomy scan. The anatomy scan is where you find out if you're having a boy or a girl, if they are participating at that time. And they also check everything: the baby's heart, are the lungs growing good, is the heart pumping well, are the kidneys doing well, what does their head look like, their limbs, do they have all their fingers, do they have all their toes, all of that. So by this time, it was August of 2022. I was supposed to go in for the anatomy scan. I'll never forget it. It was a Friday. It was the last Friday, actually, of the month. The date, I don't remember. The reason I know that it was the last Friday of the month, because the church that I attend, we have a service the last Friday of every month. It's a night of just like miracles. It's a night of worship. It's just a night of just going after God and there being a collision with heaven and earth. So that's how I remember that it was a Friday, and it was the last Friday of the month in August of 2022. So I go to have the anatomy scan done, and I walk up to the desk. I'm like, I'm here for my appointment. I'm supposed to have an anatomy scan done. They don't have me on the schedule. They say, Miss McCoy, we tried to call you. Our ultrasound technician is out. We won't be able to do your anatomy scan. And I'm like, I didn't get a call about this. So, what number did you call? And they called my parents' number, which I thought was very weird, because they always were calling my direct cell phone, my number. So it was just kind of weird, like how that worked out. But I didn't really stress a whole lot about that at the time. I just put it in the back of my head because I'm like, okay, well, I have, reservations about a whole bunch of ultrasounds and everything. And I think that's why I didn't really stress about it. So I went on to the worship night, and everything, was fine. I could feel my baby move. Everything was just perfect. I didn't have any problems, nothing. The entire pregnancy, no problems. I may experience some dizziness or, like lightheadedness, like if I got up really fast, but I would look up symptoms and it's like, okay, that's a part of what you're, the pregnancy, being pregnant. So I go on to the worship night. Everything is great. And then we head into the first week of September. And to be specific, it was September the 6th, 2020. So remember, I stated that we found out that we were pregnant back in May of 2022. May of 2022. And I was due January, the beginning of January 2023. Now we're moving into September 6th, 2022. I may have said 2020. My bad if I did. I'm getting up and I'm getting ready for work. I go to the restroom and I see a streak of blood. And I'm like, okay, I'm not sure what this is. They do say that vessels get engorged. There can be spotting or bleeding at times, you know. So I called my midwife and I let her know what I had identified when I went to the restroom. And she was just like, how are you feeling? You know, I'm feeling fine. I'm getting up. I'm getting ready to go to work. So I'm just going to head out. She said, okay, just keep an eye on everything. If it worsens, give me a call. Well, it did worsen. While I was at work, I was working with a client and just in the middle of a procedure. And it's like, okay, I need to finish up this procedure and then I need to go. So I finish up the procedure. I let my colleague know, hey, I'm having an emergency. You're going to have to reschedule all other appointments. I have to go to the doctor. And she was like, is everything okay? And I said, no, but everything is going to work out. So I talked to my midwife. I let her know what was going on. And she advised me to go to, I was kind of working with her and another OBGYN. And she advised me to go see them, let them know what was going on. I let them know what was going on. And they did an ultrasound. And the ultrasound showed that my cervix was opening up prematurely. So it was opening up before it was time. I was only 20 weeks. Your baby is generally due in 40 weeks, 41 weeks sometimes. The safest time that your baby can come is anytime after 36 weeks. So I still had 16 more weeks to go for my baby to be safely delivered. And at the time, you know, my baby's nickname was Beanie. And so I get to see Beanie on this ultrasound. I already knew he was a boy. We wanted to wait until we actually gave birth to find out what the sex was, but I knew he was a boy. You just know. So I go get another ultrasound. They showed that my cervix is opening up early. And so then they send me to another place, a high risk place, to, I guess, get more in-depth information with the ultrasound. And I'm like, okay, now all of this is happening. My husband is out of town working. I'm making all of these appointments by myself. Now my best friend knows what's going on. I think after I see the high risk doctor. And I think too, that may have been around the time when I let my husband know what was going on as well. I like to gather information first, find out what's going on, then relay the information, because who I'm relaying the information to, they have questions and they may not understand. So at least I have as much information as possible to give them. So they sit down with me, the doctor sits down with me and kind of draws a picture of the cervix, and the sac that the baby is in is protruding out of the cervix. So they don't actually have enough of the cervix to sew together to maintain the pregnancy for the next 16 plus weeks, because the sac is hanging out. So if they go in and they try to, they just even couldn't, but if they tried, it would rupture the sac, and you know, the inevitable would have happened either way. So at that time, I didn't have to rush to make a decision, but essentially I was going into labor. I didn't want to have an abortion because my baby was still alive, and I had been training, I had been preparing myself to give birth naturally, because the plan was to have my baby at home, to have a home birth. So I was already preparing myself to be in the best condition ever to have my baby at home. So I'm like, we're just gonna go through with this. So after I leave the high risk place, and let my husband know everything, I think he was already like on his way home. I went to my parents' house, and I was just there. I was talking to my mom about everything. And, eventually my husband pulls up. And we may have, let me rewind back. I think that I had pulled up to my parents' house, but I didn't go in. My husband said that he was on his way and he would be pulling up shortly. So I just waited in the car until he came. Once he came, then we went into my parents' house, and I explained to my mom what was going on. And I started having like contractions now. I couldn't sit down. It was very hard for me to sit down, and I was just getting very uncomfortable. And my mom shared with my husband, I think you need to go ahead on and take her to the hospital. So we went ahead to the hospital, and my husband had to stop and get some gas. And, he's a little like frantic, like, oh my gosh, like I can't get gas now. Like, we got to get to the hospital. And I was like, Pop, I call him Papa. I said, Pop, it's going to be okay. I have to go through this process anyway. I said, just stop and get the gas. So he stops and gets the gas. This one time that we stop and get the gas, they're changing over shifts. It's like, what in the world? Like, we never ever had this issue, but this was happening. It was just happening. I mean, it's no explanation for it. It was just happening. And it's like, it's okay. Don't worry. So get the gas. I'm in the car. I cannot sit down. So my back, I'm in the front seat. My back is facing the driving mirror, okay? And I'm just like over the chair, like, and I'm like, this is happening. Like, I need to start practicing my breathing. So I start practicing my breathing and just soothing myself. And I couldn't sit down. It was just so bad. And my water ended up breaking in the car, all over the place. I was so embarrassed, and I'm like, I'm sorry, Pop. And he's like, Ebony, it's okay. Like, it's fine, But once that water broke, I could sit down. Now, I was sitting in wetness, but I was at least like comfortable at this point. We get to the hospital, I get checked in, and just get dressed. They knew what was going on. They were expecting me to come. And so we just went through the process. Now, in September of 2022, COVID was still very prevalent, and but because of my circumstance, and we knew that the baby was not going to make it, they did allow my midwife, who didn't practice with this facility, to come in, and her apprentice also to come in. And they were just there to comfort me, because this was not how it was supposed to go. I was supposed to be giving birth to my baby at home, and that wasn't happening. So my midwife came, and she basically was the air underneath my wings, and the birth plan that we had, she supported me in having that where in the facility where I was. And so I ended up giving birth to Beanie naturally. A C-section wasn't an option. Medications to rush through the process wasn't an option. I didn't do any pain medication. I just gave birth to him naturally. And her apprentice is also a photographer. And so she took pictures of everything. And I'll actually post a picture at the end of this episode of Beanie, my sweet baby. So yeah, labor wasn't long. Labor was very easy. The hard part was knowing that you were giving birth to a baby that wasn't going to make it through labor, because he wasn't mature enough to make it through labor. He was only 20 weeks. And so that was considered a miscarriage, because miscarriage is dependent on how many weeks you are. And so I was 20 weeks. And the reason that they said that this happened early is because my cervix opened early. So that was the first one. Okay. So let's move on to, well, it's not the first one, it was the second one, but the first one where I'm extremely attached, have all these expectations, and it doesn't pan out the way that you believe that it's supposed to pan out. So the aftermath of that, I'll talk about a little later. I'm going to talk about the next pregnancy. So Beanie was born September the 6th, 2022. He was due in January of 2023. Let's fast forward to the following September. So in between the time that I have Beanie and I get pregnant in 2023, I work with some really awesome providers who were like, hey, Ebony, I know they told you that your cervix is incompetent and it's not working properly, but we don't believe that that is your issue. We would like for you to work with someone who specializes in natural ways of getting pregnant and just making the body healthy so that it can maintain a pregnancy. And at the time when they were talking to me about this, there's some colleagues that I have, I absolutely love them, and they meant well at the time, but I just mentally was just not ready for what would have to be done in order to get my body in a healthier space to conceive again. So it was a while before I even took them up on their offer of speaking to a naturopath about what they wanted to discuss. But eventually I did. And so Beanie was born in September. We get to about April, May of 2023. And I'm like, okay, I'll hear out what this naturopath has to say and, you know, work with them. And I was mainly focused on just getting my body healthy. I wasn't necessarily concerned about getting pregnant again, just being healthy. So I started to work with this naturopath, and I give him a lot of information about what I have going on, and come to find out I just have a hormone imbalance. Just all my symptoms that I was letting him know. He wanted a picture of my tongue. Like, he just did a whole different in-depth workup of me, and we went from there. And he didn't just work with me, he also worked with my husband. Because it's two of us that are coming together to create life. And so he wanted us both as healthy as possible if we were going to move forward and decide to, get pregnant again. So we worked with him, I would say, from about May all the way up until about my birthday. We worked with him for a good 90 days. And then after that 90 days, he said, whatever you guys want to do, it's up to you. Within the 90 days, he started us separately on several different supplements to help clean the liver, clean the kidneys, clean your GI tract. He put us on a special diet. I hate saying diet, but a food regimen where we could only eat anti-inflammatory foods. So foods that would decrease inflammation. That's all that we could eat. So he gave us a list of foods that he wanted us to eat more of. And then the other sections were foods that he either did not want us to eat at all and or very little. Excuse me. So we were on this food regimen. We were on a supplement regimen for 90 days. So after my birthday, before my birthday, we come off of this regimen. So I have a good time for my birthday. I had a birthday party in New York, and September, the hubby and I, we're pregnant. Okay. And again, excitement was just, I had to pray for excitement because of what just happened last September. And I shared with the Lord, I said, Lord, I need a totally different experience in order to be excited about what is happening. It cannot look like what happened previously. So I knew that this time I was not having a boy. I knew I was going to have a girl. And I just knew. And I shared with my husband, I'm not waiting to find out what I'm having. I'm going to get an anatomy scan. Like, I was just pretty aggressive about how this pregnancy was going to be because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be. When I let my midwife know that I was pregnant and what was going on, she referred me to high-risk maternal fetal specialist. And so their job was going to be to monitor my cervix because remember, with Beanie, my cervix opened early. And we didn't want that to happen again. But I felt pretty confident that that wasn't going to happen again. But I also was okay with taking precautions to just monitor. So when we sat down and we spoke with the maternal fetal high risk specialist, she had given us options on getting a cerclage where they sew the cervix up around week 15, anywhere from 13 to 15 weeks. They could sew the cervix up, and then that would stay in place until you got into the 30s, the 30 weeks. Then they would take it out so that you can go ahead on, and whenever your body was ready to go into labor and give birth, it could do it naturally. The other option was that they could do serial ultrasounds just to look at the cervix every week to make sure your cervix was doing well. And so I opted for that. I did not want to get a cerclage. I just didn't feel at peace about it. And I had the time where I could go every week and have the ultrasound done that would check my cervix. So I opted for that. And so I think after about 15 weeks, they started monitoring me every week. And I think around 15 weeks, I was probably in December. It was December time. So from December all the way up to February, every Tuesday, I was going to get my cervix assessed with an ultrasound. And my cervix didn't budge at all. And while they were assessing the cervix, they would also assess my baby. And my baby, we called her Pumpkin. She was doing absolutely great. Until we get to the last ultrasound. And it always seemed like when we were getting ready to tell everybody, because people would know that we were pregnant, but it was a very close family and friends. And of course, you know, when I went to church and they don't see a flat stomach anymore, you know, they like, hey, what's going on? Okay. So those people would know, but we didn't share with everyone. I wanted to share after we had the anatomy scan and we were done with the serial ultrasound. So we had the anatomy scan. She was growing fine. Everything was good. Every time I went for my cervical checkups, her heart was beating. There was no problems. We get to the last ultrasound. And we had an ultrasound tech that was she had been doing ultrasounds for a very long time. I mean, she was seasoned. She knew what she was doing. And my husband was on the phone because he was out of town for work. And she said, you know, I got to go and get another piece of equipment. And I thought that was weird. She's seasoned. She knows what she's doing. She doesn't forget equipment. I said, something's wrong. And I knew that something wasn't right because of how she left out. And then when she did not come back, the doctor came back. And I said, what's going on? Oh, she wants me to check and see, just check everything. I said, something's wrong. I said, my baby's heart is not beating. And she said, no, the baby's heart is not beating. So my husband, he's on the other line and he hears this and he's like, no, this can't be happening. I'm laying back and I rise up in shock. My body is like in shock. Cause like I just feel this like warmth come all over me. And I'm just, I don't have any words. Like I just can't believe that this is happening. And at this point, I was 24 weeks. I only had 16 more weeks to go. I was 6 months. With Beanie, I was 5 months, you know. So I'm definitely feeling at this point like, okay, downhill from here. We made it past the 20 weeks. The cervix, you know, has stayed closed. This is the last ultrasound. And then I get hit with that. So at that time, you know, like I'm shedding tears now, but at that time I couldn't even cry. With Beanie, I cried the whole time, you know, because I was just devastated. But this time it was kind of like my mind went into a mode like, Ebony, you already been here. So you already know what you need to do. So I get myself together, and because now I've got to deliver the baby. And my husband's on the line. The doctor puts us puts me in a room so that, you know, whatever decision I need to make, whatever I want to do, I had time to sit and think about it. So I talked with my husband, and I said, well, I think we need to get you a plane ticket. I don't think it's going to be good for you to drive. You know, they're not telling me I need to rush to go and do anything. So I'll wait for you to get here. So we got him a flight, and he got home, and we just went home, and we just went to bed because we knew what was going to happen the next day. So the next day they were expecting me again. And because now they have to induce labor, I couldn't keep my baby dead in me for long, you know. And it's so funny because before that Sunday, I was like, you know, she's not moving around much. She's, you know, I knew when she would move, you know, if I ate something, or it was mainly if I ate something or if I drank something, she was moving around. And I'm like, she's just not moving like she normally does. And my mom was like, you know, she might be asleep, you know, she may be resting. And I could go along with that because they do sleep. They sleep a lot. And then that Tuesday, I saw my midwife. My midwife was looking for a fetal heartbeat, and she wasn't really like picking up on it. And I had the follow-up appointment for my cervix to get checked. And lo and behold, that's why she couldn't pick up on it. So I'm at the hospital. They give me medication to induce labor. And so we're just my husband and I are kind of sitting around. I'm letting some people who did know that I was pregnant, I was letting them know what happened, because I just wanted to get through all of that. And then one of our good friends, Alicia, she's actually been on the podcast. You should check her episode out. She just was like, what is going on? And she just came to the hospital. I never told her what hospital we were in. I just told her what we were experiencing and what was happening. And she found where we were, and she came. And she was just like, you know, what can I do? How can I pray for you? Just all the things. And I'm going to get more into community later. I want to finish this up. But when people want to love on you, let them love on you. That's what you build community for. Because life will happen, things will happen that are unexpected, and you will need support. And she came, and it was great. And I said, you know, we can just talk about anything, you know. So we talked about the kids, we talked about what she had going on, we laughed and everything, because I already knew that this process was happening. And then she goes over and she sits down in a chair, and I'm like, Alicia, what are you doing? She was like, I'm not leaving until you say it's time for me to go. And I said, Alicia, it's time for you to go. And the reason I said that was because my contractions were coming faster, harder, and I knew that I was going to have to give birth soon. And I needed to get some rest because I didn't know when this was going to happen. And good thing I did decide to get rest, because I had Pumpkin at like 3 o'clock in the morning in February. So yeah, I had pumpkin in February, I believe. I have a necklace that's made of all the dates of the babies that I have lost, just for a keepsake and just to remind me that I am a mom, although my babies did not make it. So I had Rafa about 3 o'clock in the morning. Her name was going to be Rafa Grace Staten, but I called her Pumpkin. And yeah, so I had her naturally. My births were natural, no pain medication. The only medication that was used was to induce labor because my cervix was strong and it didn't open up at all because it wasn't ready to give birth. And I had her. And so those were my experiences. A miscarriage at 10 weeks, a miscarriage at 20 weeks, a stillbirth at 24 weeks. So then, now, after giving birth, you deal with the aftermath. And the aftermath is what kicks you behind. Excuse me. So, with Beanie, I had no time to process anything. I wake up in the morning, I see that I'm bleeding. The bleeding progressively gets worse throughout the day. And you go and you see the provider. They tell you you're already in labor. You have your baby that same day. No time to process anything, no time to think about anything. You're just in shock. And after everything, you generally get 6 weeks off from work. And 6 weeks is no kind of time. It's no kind of time if you even just have a normal, healthy labor, delivery, and baby. Let alone, I had my baby. My baby did not live, and I'm off for 6 weeks. I didn't know the difference between postpartum and grief. I believed that I was just totally dealing with grief, sadness, confusion. You're like, Lord, of all things, you choose this. But then you look at like, well, I don't want cancer. I don't want some type of terminal illness. But this, you're just left speechless. I didn't take the full 6 weeks. I took 5 weeks. Afterwards, I can't say like I was just like better, but I knew like I had to move on with life. But during the time that I was off, you just trying to just make it. That's it. You just trying to make it. And you just trying to survive. Because you just have so many questions. And so during that time, whatever emotions I had, I just let them be. I spent a lot of time with my mom. And I remember one time I went over to her house and she was like, Ebony, you just look gray. And I probably did look gray, because you have all these expectations and you're doing all the things, eating all the things, exercising, drinking all the water, getting all the rest that you need, just doing everything to prepare you and your baby for a safe delivery. You just believing God. Like, I would say, you know, my baby is dedicated to the Lord. And I would often reference Hannah in the Bible when she had Samuel, and she wasn't getting pregnant for whatever reason, and she finally did, and she dedicated her baby to the Lord. And I was like, my baby's going to be dedicated to the Lord. I want my baby to love the Lord. Like, everything was just about the Lord. And I almost feel like the Lord was like, okay, is what she saying true? I have no idea why this happened. I didn't find out I didn't have my anatomy scan. And I was like, okay, well, what if I had the anatomy scan, would that have shown that my cervix has started to open early? And then could an intervention have been done at that time? It's all these puzzle pieces that you're trying to put together to figure out why this happened, how it could have been prevented. But there's nothing that I could have done, that anybody could have done, because the Lord allowed this to happen. The why, I don't have a tangible why. But I do know that if that did not happen, I would not be sitting here today to glorify His name. There would not be no Candid Convos with Nurse E, because I would be knee deep in Pampers trying to parent those two little babies. There would be so many things that would not be. My faith would not be where it is had these things happen. My boldness in Him would not be where it is had those things not happened. He would not be who He is in my life had those things not happened. That's what I got for you. That's all I got. That's all I got. So it doesn't matter if I try to figure out the why, it still probably would not have been the why. But I do know what has come out of this has made me a better person. It has made me a better believer. It has made me a better friend. It has made me a better daughter, wife, human being, because of the compassion that I have now, the patience that I have now, the kindness that I show now, all of which was shown to me. So you still go through all the things after you have the baby. So the aftermath isn't just emotional, it's also physical. My edges got thin. I'm like, how is this happening when I was just 20 weeks and 24 weeks? But still you have the pregnancy hormones. Your body is still going to go through what it needs to go through, even though your baby did not make it, because your body just knows that you were pregnant. My milk came in. My abdominal muscles separated. And that's all good. And you don't mind those changes happening when you have a live baby. But when you don't have a live baby, you seeing those changes, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good. It's like those are your like battle scars. But it's like, why have these battle scars when you don't have a result from the battle? So yeah, so you have that. You deal with anger. You're angry. You're angry. And I don't know necessarily if I ever felt like angry with God in comparison to just angry about how the situation didn't play out the way you thought it was going to play out and all the expectations that you had. Again, when we found out about Pumpkin, I had bought everything from Amazon to prepare for the announcement. I had bought everything. It was going to be so cute. Like my husband was going to be like a chef, and we were going to act like we were baking, and we were going to say that the pumpkin pie was going to be ready in June. Like, I mean, how, you know, how you're prepared to start telling everybody, and then you get to your last appointment and your baby's heart is not beating. So you have to deal with that. The aftermath is the physical, the aftermath is the emotional, the aftermath is the expectations. And then everybody around you is now pregnant. So that's the other thing you have to deal with. Seeing other people pregnant. And then you start comparing your life, your setup, to their life and their setup. What you think you know, because you don't know anything about what they have believed God for, what they've been praying about. We don't know anything. But you judge it. You judge it. There was 2 instances that happened. So one after Beanie that I vividly remember, my mother and I were going to grab a bite to eat, grab some pizza downtown. And I see this lady, and she has an ankle bracelet on, she's vaping, and she's pregnant. And I said, and her baby is going to make it. Angry. And when you're hurting, you can judge situations. We shouldn't be judging a situation anyway, but it happens when you're hurt and when you're angry and when you don't understand and when someone else's situation doesn't look ideal for your standards, what you believe a child should come into. So that was one incident. And then I remember with Rafa, so that's Pumpkin, my husband and I were down at the harbor, and I see a male same-sex couple with a little black baby. And I felt a whole way about that. A whole way about that. But when you are hurt, when you don't understand, when you have an expectation, you judge what you see to get some type of comfort from what it is that you have lost. And so my tip that I want to give is when someone is hurting, especially if they've had a pregnancy loss, be patient with them. They're not in the best space emotionally, mentally, physically, even spiritually. And if they're at their healthiest, they probably wouldn't say or do some of the things that they do. But when they're hurt and they're trying to navigate something that they don't understand, they need a little bit more grace during that time. Another tip is that I didn't feel like I received well in certain arenas is just being checked on. where I worked, you know, I wasn't the only one that was pregnant. There were several people that were pregnant around the same time that I was pregnant both times. And there was no follow-up. There was no checking on. Not in the capacity in which I thought it should have been done. And what I've learned is that people feel very uncomfortable talking about a loss or just grief or any of that. They don't know how to manage it. You don't know how to manage it. And they just rather just, you know, leave you alone and have you work it out. And when you're ready, you know, have you talk about it. And I read this book, the Grief Recovery Handbook, that a friend of mine, she's a psychologist, gave me. And one thing that I learned from that book is when someone is suffering, you don't have to have the words you don't have to have any words. But your presence, you offering your presence, letting them know like, hey, you know, when you want to talk, I'm available. Just acknowledging their loss or their grief can make a very big difference. Very big difference. So I encourage that if you don't have the words, that's fine. But if you do have a relationship with the person, offer and say, you know, how can I be here for you during this time? And if you don't know, it's okay. But whenever you're ready, I'm here. That means a lot. And when someone wants to reach out, they'll reach out. They'll take you up on that offer. But just being available, you know, we normalize someone having a baby and having a successful pregnancy and having their bundle of joy. We don't normalize when someone loses their baby and how they still can be celebrated in spite of not having their baby. And so I'm hoping that in sharing this as well, that will help people see like, okay, this is a really, really sad time, a very low time for this person. And they need support. Let's celebrate how far they've made it. Let's celebrate what they did accomplish. And normalize that although your baby didn't make it, you are a mom, and be celebrated for being a mom of babies that are not here. I physically had 2 babies. They are with their creator. Rafa is buried. She has a gravesite, you know, like, yeah, I'm a mom. And it's uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to say. It's not uncomfortable to say anymore because of the work that I've had to do with that. Which also brings up, after Beanie, I went to Grief Share. I worked with a therapist. After Rafa, I also had some more friendship therapy with a friend that's a psychologist. I've read some books, you know, but I really, most of all, had to cling to the Word of God. And I had to remind myself of the character of God. It was just me and Him. Also, my community, they would come. Brought baskets of things. I let my pastor know what was going on. They sent lots of gifts and DoorDash and just loved on me and my husband during that time. I cannot stress the importance of having a community and letting people love on you and letting people take care of you during a time that is just very, very difficult. We had church members that would bring us food, that cooked for us. We had so much love. We had so much support, and it was very, very appreciative. And I don't think that I would be where I am today being able to discuss this with you had we not had community as well. But now I'm on, although it's very emotional, because it's just sad and I'm just a human. I have experienced and am experiencing joy. The Lord is good and he is worthy to be praised. And his word and his spirit has given me much comfort. And so anyone who has gone through this and has turned their back on the Lord, like they're upset with him, he can handle that. But I would like to encourage you and to make sure that you don't just totally turn away from him because things don't look or didn't look the way you thought that they should have. And I highly encourage you to get into the Word of God. And I want to share with you some scriptures that really, really encouraged me during this time. I have a lot of them. And I can also put them in the description as well. Oh, me. Romans 11:36. For of him and through him and to him are all things, to whom be glory forever. God is in charge of everything. Everything is through him and in him. And he will handle it. He will take care of it. Oh, there's one. Psalms 147:3. He heals the brokenhearted and bandages their wounds. There's this song that I would listen to regularly. And in this, it was like a song and like a sermon mixed all together. And one of the things that he would say, his name is Todd Galbraith. In this song, it was called I Want to Be More Like You, and it was talking about being more like Christ. And he was talking about an encounter that he had with someone who did pottery. And so the potter was showing him how to like mold the clay. And Todd said, well, my clay doesn't look like yours. Since I've messed it up, should we just throw it away? And the potter said to Todd, he said, if we bake the clay, throw it in the fire, throw it on the ground, crush it, make it into dust, a real potter would take what other people would throw away and make something out of nothing. And then he goes on to say, I don't care how broken you are. I don't care how messed up you are. We serve a God who puts broken things back together. And when I tell you that that would get me going every single time I listen to it, because I feel like I was broken over Beanie, broken over Pumpkin, broken over my miscarriage I had at 10 weeks. We called them Cubby. Didn't even know I was broken at that time. But the Lord has mended me and put me back together and made me stronger than ever because of him. There is this verse that talks about our weaknesses. And I didn't put it in this one. So give me just a second. Give me just a second. Because this is very, very important that I want to share. Each time he said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weakness so that the power of Christ can work through me." I can boast in my weakness. I can be weak because I know that the power of Christ is going to give me strength and work through me. And that strength is resilient strength. That strength doesn't allow you to be bitter. That strength doesn't allow you to be resentful. That strength allows you to have joy, unspeakable joy. And this is 2 Corinthians 12:9. So that's a very important verse to me. Oh my gosh. Let all that I am praise the Lord. May I never forget the good things he does for me. He renews my strength. He guides me along right paths, bringing honor to his name. You guys, if I didn't know the Lord, I don't know where I would be. And it's one more verse that I want to share. I have so many verses, but this was another one. This one really hit home after Pumpkin. Can anything ever separate us from Christ's love? Does it mean he no longer loves us if we have trouble or calamity, or are persecuted, or hungry, or destitute, or in danger, or threatened with death? No. Despite all these things, overwhelming victory is ours through Christ who loved us. Romans 8:35 and 37. No matter what we have going on, Christ loves us. He died for us, and we can experience eternal life because of him. I know that my babies are safe. I know where they're spending eternity. And although I love them very deeply with the short time that I had with them, he loves them more. And he had a plan for them. And so I hope that you leave here encouraged. And I hope that you walk away with just not my story, my testimony, my journey, but you walk away knowing that you can have a personal relationship with the Lord and you can experience unspeakable joy no matter what transpires in your life, because he is using it to draw you closer to him, to have an encounter with him that is life-changing, to share with others. Remember that you were made on purpose, for a purpose. There's a hope and a future that's attached to you. And I hope and I believe that you will go out and live the life that you were designed to live. All right, you guys, I love you deeply, and I will see you on the next